this is going to be an introduction to, and I have to keep an eye on my iPad because it might start slipping. This is going to be an introduction to the next section of the textbook, and I'll go over the whole chapter when I'm with my keyboard. I just thought it'd be nice to get some video of my cousin's very flowery porch and looking back at the horse barn and whatever might be rolling on back there. And so a little bit of an introduction to the next section, chapter 5, 6, and 7, and 8, and then specifically chapter 5. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit so you can see my beautiful handiwork. All right, so I'll have to move this around some. So aspects of music include sound, harmony, melody, rhythm, and form. And sound is the combination of the voices and instruments used, the texture of the music, meaning what? The way the melodic, rhythmic, and harmonic materials are woven together, and then the effects of the dynamics. All of that together, I'll hold that there for a little while, is reflected in sound. Then harmony, you can read harmony. I can try to read it upside down. According to Benward, page 95, it includes the harmonic patterns and progressions, the tonal implications of the harmony, and how the harmony is sustained and elaborated. In other words, the chords, how the chords repeat and get decorated, and anything to do with the harmony and the chords. Melody, ooh, that's a complicated definition, includes the prominent melody lines, the ones you really hear very obviously, how they're repeated, how they're varied, how high and low they go, what kind of shape they take, what sort of phrases they form, and the scales that create them, and their relationship to other melodic lines. I'm going to push this up a little bit. Okay, rhythm includes the nature of rhythmic activity, like what kind of rhythms, the tempo, which is the speed, if the tempo or the speed changes, the density of rhythmic activity, meaning how many rhythms are going on at the same time, and are they the same rhythms or different rhythms? How do they interact with each other? And the harmonic rhythm, or the rate at which the harmonies change. I should really flip, I'm going to flip that over to its side in a little while. And then form is a result of sound, harmony, melody, and rhythm. So let me see if I can do, this is all going to be very exciting for you guys. I can see that now. Let's see if this works a little better. So this is basically just taken from page 95. And the aspects of music, especially as it pertains to Western European art music: sound, harmony, melody, rhythm, and form. Now in chapter 5, they're going to talk mostly about phrases, phrase construction, and cadences, which are the punctuations for phrases, and there's a number of them. And then non-harmonic tones, which are tones that don't belong in the prevailing harmony. So, for cadences, you want to learn these words, and then you want to learn what they mean, but I think sometimes it helps just to learn the words. Perfect authentic cadence, imperfect authentic cadence, half cadence, plagal cadence, deceptive cadence, and rhythmic cadence. And a rhythmic cadence is a cadence created by the rhythm, not by the harmony necessarily. On page 97, a phrase is a substantial musical thought which ends with a musical punctuation called a cadence. phrases are created in music through an interaction of, you guessed it, melody, harmony, and rhythm. A perfect authentic cadence, in simplest terms, is when you have a dominant chord, a 5 chord in root position, going to a 1 chord in root position, and in addition to all of that, the 1 chord has the tonic as the soprano note. So the 5 and the 1 are the 5 and the 1, and they're in root position, and the tonic note is at the top of the tonic chord. An imperfect authentic cadence is a 5 to a 1 where not all of those situations are present. So something could be in an inversion, or the soprano note in the 1 chord might not be the tonic. Half cadence is a cadence that ends on the dominant. That's a very unsettled, well, not necessarily unsettled feeling, but definitely a feeling of we're going on to do more stuff. A plagal cadence is your amen cadence, when you go from a 4 chord to a 1 chord. You hear it a lot in liturgical music. A dissipative cadence is a cadence that feels like it should go to 1, but then it doesn't. Usually it goes to a 6 chord. It might be a 5 to a 6 or a 7 to a 6. And a rhythmic cadence is one where the rhythm creates the sense of punctuation and not the harmony. So again, the words you want to learn and know what they mean are perfect authentic cadence, imperfect authentic cadence, half cadence, plagal cadence, dissipative cadence, and rhythmic cadence. And then, because this all wasn't quite enough fun, when you're looking at chords and there's notes that don't belong in those chords, then you've got non-harmonic tones. Some non-harmonic tones are accented, meaning they come on the strong parts of the beats or strong parts of the measure, and others are not accented. So I put something that's supposed to look like an accent mark if it's an accented non-harmonic tone, and then a slash through it for not accented non-harmonic tone. So first of all, again, learn the words. You want to learn about passing tones, neighbor tones or neighboring tones, escape tones, appoggiaturas, suspensions, retardations, and anticipations. Passing tones and neighbor tones are the simplest ones to identify. A passing tone will go from a note that belongs in a chord. Oh, excuse me while I put in my microphone. I never remember to plug in the microphone. I've got so many other things I'm thinking about technologically that I don't plug in my microphone. I don't know what the point is of having a microphone if you're not going to plug it in. Okay, well, that's good. I remembered in time for the really delicate stuff here. Passing tones, neighbor tones, escape tones, appoggiaturas, suspensions, retardations, and anticipations. A passing tone is a tone that passes from one chord tone to another chord tone. So 2 tones that belong in the chord, whatever the chords might be, with a note that passes between those 2 notes stepwise usually, and that doesn't belong in either chord. And they can happen in a spot that's not accented or a spot that is accented. Neighboring tones are the next easiest ones to figure out what they are. They either go up like from a note to the note above and back down to the same note, or below. So there's upper neighbor tones and lower neighbor tones. If you go from an upper neighbor tone to a lower neighbor tone to a chord tone, that's called, in some places, double passing tones. In other places, it's called changing tones. An escape tone is kind of the opposite of an appoggiatura. So you have to think about if you're escaping from something. You kind of sneak away and then you run. So an escape tone, usually you go up a step and then down a skip. With appoggiaturas, you skip first and then you step. And it could be either direction. Mostly, well, I'm not going to say what mostly it is, because I could be wrong. Suspensions, there's a number of different suspensions, depending on the interval the suspension creates with the bass note. A suspension, the dead giveaway is going to be that it's been prepared. So the suspension note in the chord will have been a chord tone in the previous chord. It'll be the same note. It'll have been in the previous chord. It kind of gets held over, not necessarily tied, but it reappears again in the next chord, but it's not part of the chord. And then it resolves to a note that is part of the chord. And you could have 7/6 suspensions, 4/3 suspensions. They'll tell you all about that in the book. It depends. You judge the distance of the interval by the bass note and then the suspended note. Retardation is similar to a suspension, except it resolves upward. A suspension will always resolve downward. If you know that if you're like, this looks like a suspension, but it's going up, then it's a retardation. And then anticipation is a note that anticipates a chord tone in the next chord. So that's it for the introduction to this section. It took a whole lot longer to make the pages than it did to talk about it. And now I'll go inside and do a lecture on the whole chapter with the musical examples at my keyboard. And by the time you watch this video, there will be no flowers. It will be autumn.